My journey starts at 14 years of age, 2:10, Friday evening, history class at school. A woman's voice started at the back of my head. And that voice still remains with me to this day, but along the way I picked up another 3. And later on, in my early 1920, I had a few personal traumas which brought me into psychiatric services with a diagnosis of post-traumatic stress disorder. And about 2 years into being a hospital patient, I happened to mention to a member of staff, a nursing member of staff who I grew up with, that I was hearing these voices, and he got terribly excited. And I thought to myself, I should have told him earlier, maybe they would have started to work with me better. And up to that point, it had been just medication and staying within hospital. So they went away and got a doctor. The doctor came back and talked to me about hearing voices, and we got very excited. So he called me back the next day and he says, "We've made a mistake. Your diagnosis is wrong. You now have a diagnosis of paranoid schizophrenia." So I thought to myself, what's this, or where does this come out, or what does it mean? So I believe hospitals or universities, they're where you learn to become mentally ill. You learn your trade in a hospital, in the old institutions. Because when I went back to the lecture theatre, which was the smoking room, which no longer exists in hospitals now, where the therapy actually happened, the professor sitting in the corner, a man that had been 30 years in the service, he says to me, "You've been to see the doctor?" I said, "Yeah, I was on him." Well, he says, "What did he say?" He says, "I've something called schizophrenia," or I couldn't even pronounce the word. And all of a sudden, snap, 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 there was 4 other people had the same diagnosis, and I thought, geez, that's great, I'm in a club now, there's a number of us. Subconsciously, I watched and learned how to become a schizophrenic by watching people who had acquired the trade and knew how to work it. The tragedy was that the 10 years I spent in hospital, I also taught a lot of people coming in how to be a good schizophrenic. And this journey went on for a long number of years, and trying to even get a weekend break, trying to get home for a weekend, just to walk into your own bedroom, to be able to look, to see had the curtains changed, had the wallpaper changed, had you still the same clothes in your wardrobe. Those sort of things. Even to get out to feel fresh air, to actually feel air or rain. I remember getting out one day into the exercise yard and sitting in the rain, and the staff were saying, "He's definitely mad, he wants to sit in the rain." But to feel that, to experience normal things. So the journey moves on. I eventually escaped, and when I say escaped, I mean escaped from the hospital. And what happened was, on a Friday evening, Thursday morning, the week before I had been denied another weekend leave, and the professor says to me, "What do you actually tell these people when you go in?" And I says to him, "Well, I'm feeling well and all that." I says, "Don't be telling them that. Tell them you want to stay and you never want to go home." So I thought, this is the first time the professor really needs to be here if he's telling me to go in and stay in a place that I want out of. There's something wrong. But I listened to him and I went and done it. 4:10 that evening, I was on weekend leave. And the week leading up to it, I had to actually develop a thinking around myself. How am I going to make... I need a plan B if plan A doesn't work. And plan B was for the week leading up to it. I used to get up every morning religiously and lift a jug of water and go around and water the plants in the ward. And I would do the same at dinner time, check them in the evening. And the nursing staff were telling my father, he's actually starting to engage now, he's starting to do things and all the rest. The problem was the plants that I was watering were artificial. I knew they were artificial. They knew they were artificial. But this was my recovery. And the sudden realisation kicked into my head, if I stay, I'm never going to get out. There's never going to be a normality. It's just going to be more of the same, more of being a professional mental patient. Because that's what I'd become. I'd become what was known in those days, and I'm going back nearly over 25 years ago, as trustees. Harry, you would remember them, nursing on wards. The trustee held the keys, so you had actually more power than a lot of the other people on the ward. But I knew there was more to life than being a mental patient, and developing strategies of how I was going to get out. But once I did get out, I got a weekend leave and I cleared off to England. And when I was in England, still on the run, as I thought, from the services, I met up with another survivor, a woman by the name of Edna Conlon. And Edna Conlon had spent her life with the same diagnosis and lived on the streets. And I was fortunate enough to spend 3 months living on the streets with her. And she taught me that it was more than a label. It was the first time anybody had said to me, you can recover. You can actually recover from this. Nobody had ever mentioned that to me. In 10 years, nobody had ever said there was a possibility of recovery. All they told my family and everything else was that you were a chronic schizophrenic, you would spend the rest of your life in hospital, you'd spend the rest of your life in medication, and therefore you would never be able to work. You would be a mental patient. I don't believe that's right. I don't believe that anyone should be given a label and given that doom and destiny that you can never recover. As we know now, people do recover. I have recovered totally. Don't use services, no problem. If I had to use them, I would use them, but I don't need to use them. I've found other ways. I don't use medications, or I don't use the ECT treatments that I used to have. Don't need them. And a number of other people I've met along the way have done the same. There's a number of them sitting in this audience today. Dermot Ring's a perfect example, Margaret O'Connor. There's a number of people who have made that journey to recovery. But now what we need to do is get people to actually believe that we can recover. And using the language that we use, the language of madness does not describe people. Words like schizophrenia, manic depression, bipolar, what do they describe? They describe a collection of symptoms. They don't describe the person that the symptoms are given to. They don't understand their life history, the traumas that they've come through, a lot of them from early childhood. These words mean nothing. And to use these words actually stigmatise people. They hold people in that place of being mentally ill. That's an injustice. There's no other words you can use. It's an injustice and it's an oppression. So we as a society need to start to change how we believe and what we believe of people. And we need to understand that people have the potential to recover. You know, so I moved on. I had the privilege of being part of the Irish Advocacy Network, the birth of it, an organisation which I'm extremely proud of, and those that work on it today, they carry on the job and do a magnificent job. I had the opportunity a few years ago, Martin Rogan that was mentioned this morning, and Professor Chris Stevenson from Dublin City University come up with an idea around having someone who had used mental health services to go and work in Dublin City University as a lecturer and research. They created a post, an expert by experience. I was fortunate I applied for it and got it, but it has really opened up my life and my whole concept and ideas of how we can make things better for people and how we can work with people through that process. We have gone on to design a leadership programme which I think is quite unique, probably across Europe, in the sense that we have a mental health service provider, usually someone from a management perspective, a carer and a service user coming together to do a level 8 module degree course on service improvement and how people can actually engage and work together as teams for the betterment of that local service. And we've now 3 years of that gone, and we're starting to see projects coming to fruition through those 3 years. And we have also now, I have to say, in the intellectual disability world, colleagues of mine down in the audience, Deirdre Corby and Teresa Danaher, have developed the same course for intellectual disabilities. And these are the things we need to be doing. We need to be creating the conditions that don't trap people, that don't hold them in their boxes, that allow them to develop as citizens, equal citizens of this country. That we do not hold people and say to them, this is what you're capable of. How dare anyone suggest that anyone with a mental health difficulty or an intellectual disability or any disability is not capable of a full and complete life? We talk about Nazism. The reality is that when we have those conditions within our own thinking, those attitudes, those are the very things that hold people back and hold them down. We need to engage and open our society right across and accept people as they are for who they are, not who we want them to be. And I'm going to leave you by one thought, just as something that, if you think about it, change is inevitable. It happens every day of the week. It happens in all our own lives. It happens everything around us. Progress is optional. Thank you.